Welcome to the debate. You know, when you go to a theater and sit down for a play, you can always look up at the rafters. You can see the heavy black rigging, the stage lights, the scaffolding holding up the entire illusion.
Right. Yeah, the mechanics of the artifice are entirely visible. I mean, you willingly suspend your disbelief to enjoy the story, but if you ever want to break the spell, all you really have to do is look up and see the wires.
Exactly. You know it is a stage. But imagine if you couldn't see those rafters. Imagine if you and everyone you know genuinely believed that the stage was the entire universe. And then, one day, the sky flickers. A pixel drops out of the sunset.
A wire catches the light where there absolutely shouldn't be a wire. Right. And that is the exact moment the illusion shatters. You suddenly realize the solid ground you've been standing on your entire life, the very fabric of your world, might just be lines of code.
Yeah, and that flickering sky is the exact phenomenon we're examining today. We're exploring the central themes from the recent publication of The Parallel Observer. That was created by John Grant, the founder and CEO of InnovateXR.
Right.
The material presents a near-future society that is actively grappling with a simmering, really pervasive theory, the very real possibility that they exist entirely within a simulated reality.
Which is just a massive existential weight dropped squarely onto the shoulders of the general public. I mean, it's huge.
It is, which brings us to our central question. Does the growing societal awareness of a potentially simulated reality foster profound human resilience and, a renewed pursuit of truth? Or does it fundamentally erode our sense of agency, trust, and democratic stability? I argue that the simulation hypothesis actually acts as a powerful catalyst for human resilience.
Okay.
It pushes society to actively defend truth and find profound, undeniable meaning in human endeavor.
And I argue the exact opposite, really, that this existential backdrop inherently undermines human agency. When the nature of reality is in question, it breathes a systemic doubt that inevitably destabilizes our democratic processes and our individual sense of purpose.
Well, if we look closely at how humanity actually responds to this existential weight in the source material, the psychological and institutional resilience on display is truly remarkable. I mean, we do not see widespread collapse.
But we see anxiety.
Sure, but take the 2026 Summer Olympics in Phoenix, for example. We have a society staring into the void, right? Questioning the literal atomic structure of their reality.
A society that is deeply, deeply anxious.
Anxious, yes, absolutely. But what is their actual response? They don't just curl up in despair. They train, they compete. Rather than succumbing to existential dread, athletes and citizens are finding immense motivation in the sheer physicality of sportsmanship.
Right, but
they're using local athletics as a symbol of unity. It proves that the human drive for meaning transcends the medium of reality. I mean, even if the track is simulated, the sweat, the lactic acid in the muscles, the roar of the crowd, those things are profoundly real to the person experiencing them.
I hear you, but we cannot mistake coping mechanisms for systemic health.
A coping mechanism?
Yes. A sprinter focusing on a finish line might feel temporary purpose, but that does not fix the macro-level damage to the social contract. The simulation framework inherently unravels democratic stability.
How so, though? I mean, if the people are still engaging in society, like the athletes, why is the framework unraveling?
Because of the concepts outlined in the tensions of democracy. Democracy requires a shared baseline of reality. It demands a consensus on basic facts. When the lines between the real and the simulated blur, citizens can no longer trust the foundational framework in which they exist.
But
let me just finish this thought. Every piece of data, every news broadcast, and every political interaction is suddenly clouded by the suspicion that it might be artificially generated. When that happens, complex decision-making is entirely paralyzed.
Okay, but doesn't the society in the Parallel Observer immediately build tools to combat that exact paralysis? The material clearly details the rise of source verifiers. These are proactive guardians against digital deception.
Yes, they build them, but we really need to look at what that actually means for the average person.
It means empowerment. I mean, deepfakes and misinformation are fundamentally just the latest iteration of deception. Humanity has always dealt with counterfeits, forged letters in antiquity, state propaganda in the 20th century, and now, deepfakes.
Right, but the scale is...
The source verifiers act as an essential digital watchdog. They are ensuring that our perceived truth isn't just some, glitch in the simulation. Society is actively building an immune system against deception.
You are calling it an immune system, but I see it as an autoimmune disease.
Wait, an autoimmune disease?
Yes. You're framing the existence of source verifiers as this triumph of the human spirit. But think about the mechanism of how this works day to day. You have a massive infrastructure of professional verifiers and algorithms checking algorithms, just so the public can agree on what happened yesterday.
But verification is a core pillar of a functional society. We've always had auditors. We've always had journalists.
Not at this scale. And absolutely not with this cognitive burden. I mean, imagine coming home from work, and before you can even react to a news story about a new tax policy or, say, a local bridge collapsing, you have to run a cryptographic audit to make sure the event actually occurred.
Well,
if the population constantly suspects their reality is a glitch, the fundamental trust required for democratic processes is broken from the start.
You are assuming that this extra layer of verification is destroying trust, rather than replacing blind faith with verified certainty.
Because you cannot build a stable society when the default cognitive state of every citizen is epistemological paranoia. They are living in a constant state of wondering if their own recent memories or the video they just watched are fabrications. Exhausts the electorate. When people have to spend immense cognitive calories just verifying that a political candidate actually exists in the physical space they claim to be in, they eventually give up. They retreat into apathy. That is the true threat to democracy.
I think you're assuming democracy requires an effortless consensus to be healthy. But let me ask you this directly. If democratic processes are inherently fragile, isn't the formalized institutionalization of source verifiers actually a sign of a maturing democracy adapting to a new technological paradigm rather than a failing one?
Maturing or just surviving on life support? I mean, adaptation does not inherently mean thriving. Institutionalizing extreme skepticism changes the very nature of how we relate to one another.
Okay.
When the societal motto shifts from trust but verify to assume deception until mathematically proven otherwise, the social fabric frays. People begin to feel completely powerless. And we see this exact fraying in cultural expression within the material. Look at the public outcry in Italy.
Ah, you are referring to the concert cancellations.
Exactly. We saw sweeping bans on high-profile performers in Italy that led to massive cultural backlash. Entire tours were just wiped out. And this was not a scheduling conflict or a standard permit issue. It was arbitrary.
But why the massive backlash? Concerts get canceled all the time. People get over it.
Because the public realized the reason for the ban. The material implies an algorithmic reality management system flagged these massive, highly emotional public gatherings as destabilizing variables. The populace woke up to the terrifying realization of realities management.
Right, so they felt the parameters of their world closing in on them.
Yes, it reveals a deep, simmering socio-political angst. The populace realized that if society, or whoever, or whatever, is running the simulation can control and arbitrarily cancel cultural touchstones, they are controlling reality itself. It is a manifestation of profound impotence. When the public realizes their cultural experiences are subject to arbitrary management by unseen forces, it breeds an existential claustrophobia that cannot simply be verified away by your source verifiers.
See, I look at that exact same scenario and see the literal opposite of impotence. That interpretation completely ignores the active role of the artists and the public in the aftermath. Let's reframe this cultural tension. Yes, the bans happened, and yes, there was public outcry, but look at the response.
It was widespread panic and resentment.
And action. These artists didn't just disappear into the ether or accept the parameters of the band. They positioned themselves as activists. The power of culture to provoke thought amid profound confusion shows that human beings will always use art to challenge their constraints. They are claiming agency, even within a suspected simulation.
Claiming agency or just shouting at a brick wall?
The shouting matters. The outcry in Italy isn't a sign of submission. It is a vital act of rebellion. It shows that even if people suspect they are in a simulation, they refuse to be passive subjects of it. Art has always been the way humanity pushes back against the limits of its environment.
Well,
If anything, the simulation hypothesis has reinvigorated cultural expression, giving it a high-stakes importance it hasn't had in decades. The artists are actively testing the boundaries of the simulation.
I understand the romanticism in that rebellion. I really do. But rebellion in art is a luxury. We have to look at the daily lived reality of the populace. How does this existential testing play out when a regular person just goes to work? Let's look at the technological determinism we see in the AI economic shift in Phoenix.
Right. Phoenix is the central hub for AI innovation in the material. It's booming.
Economically, yes, it brings incredible efficiency. But the Parallel Observer highlights how this heavy reliance on AI creates profound ethical and personal voids. People are waking up, going to their jobs, and questioning the depth and authenticity of their work. They feel utterly faded by algorithms.
Faded in what sense?
Automation has been changing job descriptions for a century. This is very different than a machine building a car faster than a human. If an AI dictates global market trends, hyper-analyzes your hiring viability, and determines regional resource allocation, the human worker is basically reduced to a biological subroutine.
Well, that is a very bleak view of human labor.
It is the reality presented in the material. The algorithm decides if you get promoted, if your department is funded, or if you need to relocate. This economic reality reinforces the simulation mindset in a way that underground concerts in Italy just cannot fix.
Mm-hmm.
It breeds a quiet, pervasive despair where people feel their choices do not matter because the algorithm has already calculated the outcome. They're just playing out a pre-written script.
Text of this anxiety. What you were describing as a novel, technology-induced despair is actually an ancient human preoccupation. We can link this modern anxiety directly to the themes explored in The Paradox of Existence, a simulation of thought.
So you are saying the fear of the algorithm is not new?
Exactly. Let me offer a comparison. Think about the ancient theological and philosophical debates regarding free will versus a divine plan. For centuries, theologians and philosophers argued about predestination. If an all-knowing, all-powerful creator already knows every choice you will ever make and has designed the universe accordingly, do you actually have free will?
Right, a classic paradox.
Right. Today, we have simply swapped out the word creator for algorithm. We are asking the exact same questions. Algorithmic determinism is just the modern vocabulary for predestination. And historically, questioning the essence of consciousness and our place in a grand design hasn't led to permanent paralysis. It led to the Enlightenment. It spurred immense intellectual growth, the development of Stoicism, existentialism. This philosophical evolution forces us to define what makes our choices meaningful despite the overarching system, not to surrender to it.
The philosophical parallels to theological determinism are structurally elegant. I will definitely give you that. But we cannot ignore a critical divergence in the mechanism of how this affects a human life today.
Which is what?
Tangibility. The gods of the ancient world, or the theoretical architects of predestination, did not send you an automated rejection email for a mortgage application.
Well, no.
They did not dynamically alter the price of your groceries based on your localized data profile as you walk down the aisle.
So the speed and visibility of the algorithm is the issue for you.
The visibility, the speed, and the undeniable material consequences, the immediate lived repercussions of AI governance present novel, tangible threats to daily freedom that ancient philosophers never had to navigate. When an algorithm denies you a job, it's not some metaphysical abstraction to debate over wine. It is a material deprivation.
I see your point.
The simulation theory, paired with actual integrated AI, makes the divine plan measurable, corporate, and inescapable. It removes the mystery of existence and replaces it with cold, hard code. That does not spur an enlightenment, it spurs a feeling of being trapped in a digital panopticon.
But isn't the recognition of that very code the first crucial step toward rewriting it? That is why the source verifiers and the activist artists are so vital to this society. They are the ones looking at the walls of the panopticon and saying, we can audit this, we can challenge the parameters.
Can they? Or are they just allowed to think they can?
It is not about ignoring the algorithm. It is about recognizing that we still possess the conscious intent to question it. The very fact that we are analyzing the ethical voids of AI, that the parallel observer is publishing pieces prompting us to rethink our understanding of life itself, proves we are not just biological subroutines. A subroutine does not question its own programming.
A subroutine absolutely might question its programming if the parameters of its code include a module for self-reflection that ultimately loops back to systemic compliance.
Oh, wow. So you are suggesting the rebellion itself is programmed?
That is the true terrifying danger of the simulation paradigm. It allows for the illusion of rebellion. Let's use a very grounded metaphor. It is like a character in a video game who thinks they are rebelling against the system because they found a glitch that lets them walk through a solid wall.
Okay.
But they feel incredibly empowered. But they are still entirely inside the game. The overarching framework remains untouched. You can have your source verifiers and your activist artists, but all that rebellion just gives the citizens the comforting delusion that they are fighting back. Meanwhile, democratic trust continues its slow, inevitable collapse.
I understand the gravity of the video game metaphor, but I firmly believe you are underestimating the compounding power of authentic human action. Let's go back to where we started. The athletes preparing for the 2026 Summer Olympics in Phoenix. They are not suffering from a comforting delusion. They are engaging in the physical, undeniable reality of human limit and human potential.
But it is a hyper-localized reality. It doesn't scale to a societal governance model.
It scales because it establishes a baseline of undeniable truth. When an athlete breaks a record, the exhaustion, the pain, the triumph, those things generate a localized meaning that is completely impenetrable to existential doubt. The simulation hypothesis might strip away the absolute certainty of the macro universe, but it forces humanity to find absolute certainty in the micro universe. We find it in our relationships, in our art, in our physical endeavors. It distills the human experience down to what is most essential and undeniable.
And I would argue that what you call distillation is actually fragmentation.
Why fragmentation?
Because if we can only find certainty in the micro-universe, in the localized exertion of an athlete, or the isolated verification of a single data point by a source verifier, we have lost the capacity for a shared societal reality. We retreat into our own subjective islands because the macro-universe is too terrifying to trust.
So society basically shatters into a million individual realities.
Exactly. That is the erosion of the democratic framework. Democracy requires a macro consensus. If we only trust what is immediately in front of us, we cannot govern a nation, let alone a global society heavily reliant on integrated AI. We become a society of hyper-vigilant skeptics, isolated by our own exhausting need to constantly verify our existence.
Well, as we draw this discussion to a close, we return to the core tension raised by the parallel observer. How does humanity navigate the profound uncertainties introduced by the simulation hypothesis? I maintain that facing a potentially simulated reality brings out the most remarkable aspects of human resilience. From the institutional innovation of source verifiers actively defending our digital truth to the athletes in Phoenix finding profound purpose and unity, humanity consistently proves its enduring drive for authenticity. The simulation doesn't defeat us, it clarifies what truly matters.
And I maintain that the simulation paradigm introduces a heavy, inescapable layer of existential doubt that fundamentally fractures democratic trust and personal agency. The reliance on algorithmic governance, coupled with the constant, exhausting need to verify our daily reality, breeds a systemic angst. It leaves citizens feeling fated by unseen codes, unraveling the shared social contract that makes a complex society possible.
Yet, despite our differing interpretations of the ultimate outcome, there is a very clear point of convergence here. We both agree that the collision of AI, digital deception, and simulation theories is forcing a profound, unavoidable reckoning. society is being compelled to completely redefine what freedom, privacy, and control actually mean in this new era.
Absolutely. The intersection of these ancient philosophical inquiries regarding free will with our modern, deeply integrated AI consciousness offers a vast, incredibly complex landscape. It is a landscape that will undoubtedly dictate the future of our social structures.
And the Parallel Observer's material makes it abundantly clear that we have only scratched the surface. There is so much more to unpack regarding the true essence of reality and our place within it. We are back in the theater, looking up at the rafters, trying to make sense of the lights and wires. But whether you see those rafters as a cage or a canvas, the play goes on. We leave the ultimate interpretation of our reality's authenticity to you, the listener. Thank you for joining us on the debate.